Welcome, Master Reader. I've got with me a very interesting man that you may have heard of, and I do emphasize on the word heard. His name is Russ Johnson. I was pleasantly brought into his life due to his readings on Spotify with Neil Faded, R.A. Salvatore, with him giving us his particular skill set to make it so well grafted that I still remember some of the passages, but not by heart. So Russ, tell me this: how long have you been doing audio book readings? Because you're also an artist in regards to voice acting, if I remember correctly.
Yes, and I apologize. There's one of the cats is in the room with me, so bear with me.
That's
He might
okay.
jump up here at any time. I started doing some voiceover work, I'd say ballpark 5 or 6 years ago. I had done a lot of jobs, and I was a stay-at-home dad for many years, and finally got to the age where the kids, were well older than what required of me. And this is just something that's always been there. I've got an education in communications from the university, and it's just always something that's been there for me.
Mhm.
And so I thought I'd throw my hat into the ring. And, in our day and age, doing voiceover work from home is quite easy. A lot of people do it without a ridiculous investment of super high-end hardware and things of that end. And so I started doing some voiceover work, and I didn't get a lot. I got some. It's extremely competitive. There are a large amount of incredibly talented people out there. There's a cattail swishing by. And I would keep seeing offers to do audiobooks. And I said to myself, oh my goodness, how much time is involved in that kind of involvement? I mean, how much goes into doing an audiobook? It's just one of those things that I wanted to know.
Mhm.
And I was a big fan of the Salvatore books, and Homeland, the first book in that series, is the book that I've probably read the most. And so I just decided to do it, just to kind of do it for myself. I said, why not? I'll put this out there. And I was fortunate that I got a very positive response back from people who wanted to listen. So
Mhm.
5, 6 years, maybe five of just the audio itself. And then the audio book started just about 4 years ago.
Okay. Right now, I noticed that after you were told by Wizards of the Coast to cease and desist, unfortunately, you did the right thing of pulling everything off, but you decided to look into other avenues to continue with your talent. And I've noticed that you go as Ranger of the Grove, if I remember correctly.
Close. Before I started this endeavor altogether, I did look. I actually reached out to Salvatore,
Mhm.
and Bob Salvatore is one of these people that is a man for the people, who truly loves the people who read his books. He is a gamer for all of his life, and so he appreciates being a gamer, and
Mm.
he responds to everybody who emails him. And I had corresponded with Bob about this 4 years ago, saying, hey, can I do this? Is this cool? And he said, well, cat. Well, that's not my. I don't own the books. They're owned by Wizards of the Coast. And stop it. Sorry. I'm unexpected visitor. They're owned by Wizards of the Coast. And
Yeah.
so you would have to get their approval. And so I went to the Wizards of the Coast website, and I looked around for their copyright information, and I found their copyright information, and it looked fairly straight. Intellectual property be out there.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure you give us credit for ownership of this intellectual property. Make sure that you're not profiting from this in any way, which I wasn't. I actually made sure that there was no cash flow stream coming in, and I put every episode, hey, these books are written by Bob Salvatore. The entire copyright and intellectual property is owned by Wizards of the Coast. And so I think, okay, I think that's got me covered. I'm not a lawyer. But 4 years, right? 4 years I had been doing this, and I had recorded essentially 8 books. And so I was stunned. I was shocked. I was devastated. I was throw out any number of words. I figured after 4 years this was going to be status quo, and it was part of my life. And they reached out to me. The legal counsel is independent, and I have to say, a very good experience for what it was. I mean, they could have taken this a lot of ways, but the lawyer in question was very nice, very chill, and just kind of explained what's going on with the copyright. And I had 1 week to take it down.
That you actually got a hold of Salvatore, R.A. Salvatore. He said, sure, but I don't have the copyright anymore. It's owned by Wizards of the Coast. Wizards of the Coast, you researched their copyright, and it seems straightforward. And all of a sudden, out of 4 years of doing this, they decided to reach out to you to tell you specifically that, unfortunately, that you're good or not.
Yeah, pretty
you
much.
Have to stop. You have to stop because it's infringing on copyright. And from what I remember, you did it quite quick. In fact, I think you did it within 24 to 48 hours of actually hearing from the lawyer and knowing that something was going sideways.
Once I had received notification from the attorney, and I knew the deadline was 1 week. It was weird because I knew there were a lot of people, seeing things from the back end. You can kind of track how the people are listening. And a lot of people had caught up. They would binge the content, and they would get to the end, and they were now waiting for each new episode to come out. And then I would get notifications from people who were on book 3 or book 4 and enjoying the story as it's developing and going along the way. And it was kind of like, this is going to come as a shock to people. I'll do everything I can, which is I put out an episode the very next day with a disclaimer saying, hey, this is what's happening. These episodes are going to be gone in 1 week. Do whatever you're going to do. If you want to download these somehow, do it. You've got a week to do it. There's nothing else I can do. My hands are tied. And, it was tough, very unceremoniously on a Monday morning. I had to basically remove all of the content of the Legend of Drizzt podcast, which, there were 180 episodes ish, ballpark.
I listened to every single one of them up until that one video explaining that you were liberally kiboshed.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was a really weird time, but what came out of that was an interest in continuing. Enough people were enjoying listening to me do it. Yes. And I knew that there was going to be people who were there for the story, which I get. It's one of my favorite stories, and I knew that people were gonna 86 with the story because they're there for the story. And I knew that some people were, according to what they told me, really enjoying listening to me do it.
Yeah.
And I enjoy doing it. So I said, okay, we're going to have to reinvent. And it was this evolution. I tried to come up with different titles, and a lot of titles were taken. And finally, I thought about Tales from the Ranger's Grove, because it's got kind of a dual meaning. It's Drizzt is a ranger.
Yep.
But
and I remember the episode of the druid that he met in his grove. And that's
Mushi.
the first thing, yeah. And
Yeah.
that's the one thing that came to mind when I saw that you decided to take that on, because it's just words. So
So it's
it,
great. Exactly. It is an homage to the writing. It is based around the concept of a character, but at no point does it take any copyrights from Wizards of the Coast. It doesn't say, "Hey, this is this, this is this." It's just more of a concept, and it's we all love Dungeons and Dragons and fantasy, and you're going to find Rangers there. And so yeah, it became Tales from the Ranger's Grove,
Mhm.
and I am now moving on with a new story, a new tale from the Grove.
Yeah, Toothless, if I remember correctly.
Toothless, one of the byproducts of the end of the Drizzt podcast was a large number of people who reached out to contact me.
Mhm.
And some of those people were also authors. And a couple of them had their books up on Amazon. They were self-published. And I wanted content. My options were to read content that was not copyrighted, which there's a lot, but I don't think there was a lot that really was going to appeal to me or a lot of people who wanted to listen to Drizzt. It's older books, but there was some neat science fiction in there. A lot of H.G. Wells stuff was in there. Mary Shelley's works are in there. You got all these really cool old school things. And I was really ready to go with Bram Stoker's Dracula. I was like, you know what? It's a cool story. Everyone loves Dracula. That'd be kind of cool. But then the people started contacting me and say, "Hey, I've got a book. I've got this. I've got this. I'd love for you to read that on the podcast." And I'm like, why not? And yeah, Toothless, huge change, like a 90-degree turn change from the Drizzt books.
Kinda. It's more the way the change occurred between Toothless and Drizzt. Drizzt was always based on RA playing the character and
Right.
writing on first perspective. Toothless is more the opposite. It's the best way I can put it. If you've ever heard of a writer, which I have no book nearby, not Guy Gabriel Kay, but McKiernan, Dennis McKiernan.
Mhm.
He wrote uh, the Midgar series, which is similar to Lord of the Rings,
Mhm.
kind of parallel. But he wrote Caverns of Socrates, which reminds me of Toothless, because Toothless has characters that are playtesting a role-playing system.
Right.
Basically, a kind of a virtual reality from what I remember. And they're encountering difficulties, and we're hearing the system kind of bugging out at least twice.
Yes, that is an
So
ongoing issue.
as an ongoing issue. So you actually do the voices for all these characters, and there's more than one. There's the
Well, there's
computer.
four main characters and the computer, that's five. And then you have now the dentist, the evil dentist, which is fitting because who doesn't hate a dentist? I mean, we all go to them, but you know, nobody wants
Yeah,
to go to the dentist.
no.
So if any dentists are listening, I apologize.
So we're up to a certain degree where the dentist decided to come out. That was in the last episode, and it affected the not the, was it the coroner or the
Yes,
doctor?
the
Okay.
coroner. The coroner is
The,
the one that he is attacking right now. Actually, the new episode on my Patreon page, the new episode drops on Thursdays. So I've
okay.
already released the next episode of that, so I know what happens because I don't read ahead on the books. I like to experience it as I read it, which
Okay.
involves me going back multiple times. I will read a line and I'll read it wrong. I'll be like, that's not what the author had in mind. That's not how they wanted to say it. And so I'll
Okay.
go back and then change it with the right inflection. But I like not knowing what's coming around the corner.
So uh, from one I do radio, which is live. So when I talk, I have to make sure that I don't use any bad language, and even doubly so now is I've been accepted into the ARC program, which is a French radio server that's curated by a group of people over in Montreal. And they offer my show and other shows are now going to be made available to other radio stations that want to fill in their empty slots
Mm-hmm.
for late listening. Because I do jazz and blues, and jazz and blues is, for the better way of describing it, it's category C, which means that it's not obligatory unless you're doing an actual radio station that's strictly commercial, and that's all they'll be playing, jazz or
Mm-hmm.
blues or
Right.
not even. So how I don't have the benefit of actually stopping my radio show
Right.
to change. I have to do apologies as I go along. You've got technology, so when you're actually doing your readings,
Sorry, my apologies.
no, that's okay. That's technology for us. What, what, how, how many hours are you actually spending reading as you go along, but then having to go back?
That depends on a couple of factors. Honestly, it depends on how long the chapters are, and it kind of depends on where my head's at that day. I typically try to not do long chapters for that reason. I think that if I do it too long in one setting, I start to get my mouth and my head get a little bit tired. And I've done long recording sessions and I don't like the result because it gets to a point where I feel like now I'm just reading to read to kind of get it out there and get it done, and I lose a level of energy.
You
And I
lose
don't
the
like that result.
interest.
But in a typical episode of the podcast is 20, 25 minutes of in a chapter. That could take me anywhere from 1 to 2 hours to do, basically because of the editing. You go back in and you're editing something, and then I go back and listen to everything I record or on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll hear a noise, I'll hear a sound, I'll hear a mouth pop, I'll hear something that I don't like, and I want to edit that out. Or I will, a lot of times I won't even realize that I'll have said the wrong word. Like right now, gremlins are coming up in Toothless, and I can't get goblins out of my head. I don't know why. I want to say goblin half the time. I'll be doing this, and I finally corrected that. But finally, when I started out, it was like, and then the goblin, I'm like, no, it's gremlin. And then of course I have all these outtakes, and so it's weird. If I kept all the recordings of all of my outtakes, there would be lots of colorful language and lots of just mouth noises as you're like, oh, you just kind of expel the sounds. But yeah, you're right. I have the luxury of kind of going back and going like hop, copy, delete, cut, all this editing,
Yeah,
and then it's the
that's
inflection.
that's
I go ahead.
no, sorry, it's the tedium of actually doing that, because I have 3 hours. I have to actually edit up to a certain degree, but
Sure.
I've been given recently, actually today, this morning, I got a call from Francois, the guy that I send my copies to, and he said, okay, just do a 3 hour show, and we'll leave the radio stations to do their own copy and paste.
Okay.
So I just need to take out anything that's not relevant to my show, which is basically the radio ID for Kodiak FM.
Right.
Any commercials that they might be putting on, which is very rare at the time slot that I've got. And the beginning and end, which typically has music that's outside of my show, but it's like starting a car in winter. You want to start it up and let it run.
Sure, 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 sure.
So, so for the goblins thing for you, that would be simply because for 4 years you had goblins that were working for the Drow elves, and they
Sure,
were involved
sure, sure.
in storming the can't remember what the name of the mine is.
Well,
I've got
Mr. Wall.
Moria. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, Mines of Moria. That's Lord of the Rings, of course.
hmm
Which
So,
again, big influence on my life growing up.
so as a person, right now you're doing great with this because you're on Discord, which makes you more accessible. I no longer have to swear against Linktree because Linktree doesn't give me access to you. It gives me access to everything around you. So your
Hmm.
Patreon, buying you a cup of coffee. There's two more links which I can't remember for the life of me. But the fun fact is that you're actually actively participating with your listeners and the ones that want to reach out to you
Yeah,
through Discord, which makes things so different, but yet so mellow.
I love it. I honestly love it. I
So
love the Discord community.
now, Discord wise, put aside, you read fantasy probably for the greater part of your life.
Yes.
I just have that feeling. Have you ever played tabletop role playing?
Oh my goodness. Since like 1979, 78, I was a Dungeons and Dragons kid growing up. It was you watch you go back and watch E.T., go back and watch Stranger Things, you go back and watch the kids playing the game,
Mm,
and I was one of those kids. I loved fantasy, and my older brother, was always someone who had war games in the house. These games that have a little tiny cardboard piece that you have on a huge vast map, and on the little cardboard piece you had their attack and their defense and their movement and strategy. And so I would always be thrust against him in all kinds of tabletop games. And I had a very voracious tabletop game life. My family would play tabletop games. I would play different kinds of fantasy and science fiction tabletop games with friends, and my brother and friends. And then I would play, D&D when I had the opportunity when I was a kid. And, back then it's kind of magical because there wasn't really the internet. And
mm,
so it was all tabletop. There was no online gaming at that point. So I've played this game, for 4 decades now, more than 4 decades. It's been a fun pastime, passion of mine. I read The Hobbit, I think, when I was 12, and
okay.
that book, it was the first book that I was able to read and just keep reading and not stop until I'd gone through all these pages. So many other books, and I probably would have been classified as ADD or ADHD when I was a kid from my
Mhm,
lack of ability to focus long term on reading. But
mhm.
that book in particular, I don't know, something about it from Go was great. I just kind of read it. I sucked into it. I loved the fantasy world behind it. I was Bilbo's biggest fan, and it just kind of took off from there.
So currently, are you still role playing? I'm assuming that you possibly may, but I have a
I do.
feeling that you do.
I play Friday evenings. I play a tabletop game with a bunch of guys, most of whom are close to my age. Some of them are my age. A couple of them are a tiny bit younger. We have
Okay.
played together as a group over 20 years now. So that's a really long time group we've played. And then I now have a Saturday night group there. I'm the DM. I run the game. It's completely online. So I play two
All right.
nights a week essentially.
You play online?
I play online. I run the game.
Are you using Roll20 to do it online?
Yes, I do Roll20, which I'm not a huge fan of the interface on Roll20. I think I would have liked to have been a little more user friendly, and I think they're actually adapting that. But
Yeah.
it's a good tool. It works. It allows me to do what I need to do.
It's kind of funny because one of I would say brother-in-law, for the sake that he's a pastor, and during COVID he ran Roll20 DM. He was the DM, and he ran the games for at least 2 years. I don't know if he's still doing it, but he asked players to pay. I think it was like $10 per person
Mm-hmm.
for a session. I'm not keen on paying for play, but I'm trying to get the tabletop D&D culture back into my house. We used to, but we just don't have time. I've got one stepson that's in university. He's local, so he's in the house. We've got a second stepson who lives with his dad, who's also in the city. I've got my better half, who's an author, and she's doing virtual assistance as a job
Mm-hmm.
from home. And all of us decided to get together and do some role playing sessions.
That's great. That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
I'm a keen user of fifth edition now compared to the second edition, which was my mainstay for many years. I got into the habit at the age of 16 after attending 5-hour session at not a pawn shop, a gaming shop over the border. Where I used to live, my town was close to Van Buren, Maine, and Madawaska.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, 9 minutes got us to the border, and then we just went across. So I went there with a friend, and we were both bitten with
Yeah.
role playing, and we decided to get along and get a group together and start playing. And the biggest sessions, other than just someone's own fantasy, was a box set of Dark Sun,
Dark
and
Sun. Yes.
we made it almost to the end. We had 2 boxes left, but then the group separated because we were all being pulled to other
Yeah.
trails and other adventures that were awaiting us to actually go and do them. And there's a part of me that's um, not reminiscent. I'm what's the right word? I'm pining for this particular type
Yes.
of activity because I don't get to do it. The only thing that gets me going is possibly a game or two off my phone, which is similar to it. But
Mm-hmm.
other than that, it's not there's no dynamic
You
because
should
you're
look
playing
into
with a
the
computer.
online option. There are so many different games out there right now, and people who are playing and looking to play online, that it's a viable option, and it's a very good experience if you get together with good people.
Hmm.
Can't recommend it high enough.
Yeah, it's the timing. It's the time that I don't have, unfortunately.
Well, that's okay. Well, that's you. That's a you thing. You need to figure out what your priorities are and make time.
That's
Um,
true.
but I mean, like, if you go to Roll20, for example,
Yeah.
they have games there. Now, granted, they're not all D&D games. They have other things, but they have games there looking for players every day, throughout the day, in the evenings. So, and that is at its most basic, an easy way to find something, even if it's not the right fit. And then you've got social media outlets like Reddit and Facebook that can be used very functionally to find gaming groups. And then there's Discord servers completely focused on Dungeons and Dragons. And you can get on those quite simply very easily. So there's a lot of resources out there to try and find something online, because it is difficult to find something tabletop. I remember the days trying to find a tabletop. You drive to the local gaming store, you look on a bulletin board for someone who made a sign, said, "Hey, I'm looking for players." And you tear off the phone number, and then you run home and call them, and you're hoping that they answer the phone. And that's how I found a couple games. But this is 2023. It's digital. It's online. It caters to that now.
It's functional in that particular state of the word. And you're right. It is a me thing in regards to time. Unfortunately, I'm lucky that my job does not have me hopping on weekends. I'm free on the weekend, but the weekends is usually family time. Usually spending time with my better half, because both of us are working pretty much in the same frame. She's upstairs, I'm in a room, and we do what we can when we have time.
Right.
So, but eventually I'm probably going to have to go on Roll20 to see if I can find a D&D game. It's a pity I didn't know you way before your career, because I'd be your best friend. I'd be going to see you so often just to be able to sit across the table and play a character.
Well, playing the characters is the most fun, and I think the biggest advantage from being the DM is I play a plethora of characters. When they encounter something, they encounter a town. All of a sudden, I'm populating the town with everybody that I now have to give a voice to. So it's fun. It's fun to be the DM. It's a lot of work, and quite frankly, when I'm done here, after I have a quick bite of dinner, I'm going to start preparing for the Saturday night online game, because I have to be ready for my party.
Oh, well, I'm pretty sure they're going to have fun, and I'm going to cross my fingers that I can come across an empty slot under you as a DM.
Well, this is a very specific group. They're a group of friends all together. So this is not a mishmash of people that didn't know each other. So it's kind of a unique situation from that standpoint. But one of the cool areas on my Discord server is not only dedicated to gaming, but we have a channel on there that's dedicated to D&D. And one D&D game has already formed, from people on there who are DMs and people on there who want to play, and they've gotten together now and they are creating their first gaming session online. So that's another resource for you right there. Pretty much everybody on my server has a love of fantasy at some level, and potentially D&D.
Nice. So apart from this, apart from you being heavily involved in D&D, being an avid reader with a very melodic voice, the capacity of creating the voice for characters that are being read of in Toothless, that we were hearing while you were doing the R.A. Salvatore compilations. I, it's your voice that actually brought me along, and I went, wait a minute, why don't I ask him for an interview? I mean, he's an artist, he's a creator, he's everything that I embody in the spirit of having fun and being told a tale that you want to be brought along with it. That's the beauty of it, because when the person reading it has the voice that you're looking for, everything else is moot, because it's just playing it and listening to it, and the imagination still plays, but it's different when you have somebody that's actually doing justice to
Yeah,
a lot of
well, I
the
appreciate that.
characters.
I do appreciate that. I love being able to do that with certain voices and characters, and I know that some of the character voices I've selected in certain areas are weak or amiss. Some
Mhm.
characters that I do I like a great deal and I feel are stronger. So it's kind of a way for me personally to find some enrichment because I enjoy it. And I get to get all these voices that I hear in my head. Okay, that sounds wrong. I don't hear voices in my head, at least not the ones I'll tell you about. But
Okay.
it gives me a chance to kind of vocalize them. And we all hear voices of the characters as we read. At least I always did. I would pretend this is how Bilbo sounds. This is how Gandalf sounds. This is how Gimli sounds, and so on and so on. Then you get to see a cartoon or the movies, and you have now someone else's interpretation. And a lot of times, I would like that interpretation, and then all of a sudden, I would marry that. That's now how it sounds. And it's the same for me. I like to be able to play. I like to be able to take on the characters, and
Yeah.
that's where the fun is. And it's a challenge sometimes, but it's something I enjoy.
It's kind of funny because I got into a game based off of Salvatore's books, the ones that you were reading. So we had Canterbury, we had Canterbury's adopted father, we had Canterbury's lover, who unfortunately passed away in the books, and we had Driss. So you had four characters that you could embody. All of them, apart from Canterbury, is melee, which is face to face.
Dark Alliance, I think, is what you're talking about. Yeah,
Exactly. And one thing that kind of made me chuckle was that a lot of people on Reddit and a lot of people across the web were being very short-sighted when they were talking about the game, mostly because they're used to AD&D where you've got a mage, somebody who uses magic. There is no real magic in this, apart from sheer brute strength or some of the powers from uh, uh, Drist, who does have a little bit of
a
magical
little bit, not much, but a little
prowess,
bit. Yes.
and enough to do a lot of DPS. But uh, the from that game, I stumbled the well, stumbled. There was maybe a year or two before I stumbled on you as uh, uh, audio aficionado of Drist, and I went, maybe I can listen to this. Let's listen to it. And every single character that you did, the main characters that we have on Dark Alliance, were spot on to what I was imagining. So I had no issues with anything.
Fantastic. That's good news.
So right now you have Toothless. Do you have anything else down the road other than Toothless? Because eventually you'll hit an ending for that particular book.
There are at least two other authors that have been in contact with me. One of them is already on the Discord server, and it is a fantasy book. The author is a gamer, and it is written very much in the vein of let's go in the tavern. There are all these different races in the tavern. There's good natured animosity between different races in the tavern and brawls and so it's very this is a fantasy book. I'm another gentleman is in the process of getting me his book, and I want to get as many of these books read as possible for these people who are trying to have their voice heard as an author. I mean, I
Mm,
established a small following of people who followed along as I read Drizzt, and I was blown away and thankful for the number of people who did.
mm,
Taking that forward and giving these people a place to start is a huge, well, maybe not huge, but it's something that I can do. So, I'm already seeing a lot of people who are responding well to Toothless, who they've accepted the fact that it's never going to be drizzed again. That chapter, sadly, is closed. And so they need to get their head around that I need to do more stuff. And Toothless happens to be the next one that I'm reading right now. And when that's done, I'm not positive which book will be next. Could possibly be that fantasy book that I just mentioned. But there's a couple of them in there and more people. I actually just got an email today from somebody who reached out to me and was in the same thing. So my daughter and I have been working on this, and I'm like going, hey, you know what? Send it. Send it over here. I don't have qualifications. I can't promise you anything from me reading this. If people listen to it and they like it, that's what it's about, right? I mean, that's why I made the podcast. I made the podcast because I love the books. I love the story. And people liked it. People liked the story. They wanted to listen. And that's why I did the podcast. I didn't do it to make money or get rich. I did it because I like doing it. And I know people would want to hear that. And I'm hoping that enough people will kind of like get behind the concept. Okay, well, Toothless was great. I enjoyed Toothless. Let's go on next to go to this. And quite frankly, I like the way that this guy writes. This guy who's writing Toothless, well, I'm sorry, has written Toothless. He's in the military. He was on the GI Bill. He's working on his PhD. I mean,
wow.
he's got a lot of plates that he's spinning up in the air and balancing, and he writes well. I think that he could tweak things, and he's hearing me do it and kind of going back and saying, oh, I need to change that. I need to do that. I need to do more like this. And he's got other concepts, but he works in this lit RPG genre, which is very much up and coming and big right now. And there's a lot of avenues to go down with lit RPG. So, you know what? I'm excited. I'm excited for the fact that I've got lots of things to read, and I've got people who want to listen. What else could I ask for?
True. So true. One last question I have for you is going to be an off the wall question.
Okay, I'm ready.
Everyone that I've been doing interviews with has responded in their own kind. But what's your favorite dish if we're talking about food?
Oh, wow. Favorite dish if we're talking about food. Oh, there's so many. I don't have what would probably be referred to as a refined palate. My wife would probably be referred to as having a refined palate and much more adventurous. I like a lot of the simple, gratuitous foods. If
Okay.
you're going to put me down at a table, give me a burger. There's something sublime and amazing to be said for a cheeseburger that is prepared good, when the bread is fresh and not something out of a bag that has 10 other rolls, when the burger is not too thick and has the right consistency, when the cheese is a good pairing with the burger and it's not overpowering, and I like to mix my mayonnaise and my ketchup as a topping for my burger, and you put all these elements together and it's got the right, percentages. It's a fantastic experience. It's easy, but I don't need to have
I,
a 3 Michelin star meal.
so basically, no frou-frou, no bourgeois.
I'll eat that. I love that. Yeah, I love to go out to restaurants and kind of explore a little bit, but
Yeah.
I like to tell myself that I'm adventurous food wise until I get there, and I find myself finding something that's more in my comfort zone, as opposed to going down this channel of, well, this is what the chef prepares. That's their specialty. and kind of allowing myself, all right, okay, all right, that's what they make. Let's try it. I don't do that enough, but I do enjoy that when given the opportunity.
Okay. Well, that pretty much ends the interview.
All right. Thank you very much.
One last question I have. I noticed that you're sitting in a sound booth. Did you actually design it based on specs, or did you create it yourself?
No, there are no specs. My sound booth is very basic. I didn't have a sound studio at first. I started off with a decent quality mic. I upgraded to a slightly better mic. I've got a windscreen, as you can tell.
Mm-hmm.
This is the corner of one of the rooms in my house. And I knew that the most important side of that was acoustics.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to deaden the walls. And so I've got acoustic tiles on these two walls and the ceiling because it's a corner. This behind me is actually a freestanding armoire, essentially, a clothes closet from IKEA,
Okay.
but it's soft. And this lovely thing right here is actually a a foam mattress pad that I had for a twin bed for one of my kids. That it's soft, and it's just soft occurrences. Even my desktop is soft. I have a piece of remnant carpeting that is on top of the hard surface with a very, very large full-size gaming mouse pad that covers the vast majority, so there's no echoes.
Good.
I love the sound that comes out of this room. I think it's high quality for very affordable dollars.
Yeah,
So it's
definitely high quality, because your readings, the ones that you were allowing us to actually peruse, there was no echo, there was no
yeah,
distortion. There was, compared to where I am right now, the fact that I'm closer to the one of the walls and facing the phone, uh, there's no echo because I'm not bouncing it against the wall.
right,
But if I'm sitting opposite of where I
sure,
am, unfortunately, it sounds like I'm in a tunnel.
yeah. Well, it's
So,
just like I said, it was trial and error. I knew what I wanted to do when I built it. It wasn't super complicated to build, and it's very limited in that I don't sing, and I don't press the mics with super loud, input. I
mm,
most of what I talk and say stays in a range of volume. So I don't have to worry about stressing out the mics and doing too much. So it fits for what I have to do. Now, if this was like a full blown recording studio that would have these things, I'd probably have to design something different. But, for
yeah.
me, not being an audio engineer, this works fine.
Well, Russ, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day. I'll let you go so that you can go grab a bite and prep for your next D&D
You'll have a
sessions
burger
coming
and
up.
prepare for D&D.
There you go.
All right, my friend. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
No, it was a pleasure. Have a
Bye-bye.
nice one.